Julius Caesar. The very name evokes images of military genius, daring ambition, and a legacy that irrevocably reshaped the ancient world. Our journey begins far from Rome, in the vast untamed territories of Gaul, modern-day France, and beyond. This was Caesar's crucible, a decade-long campaign where he honed his formidable leadership, forging an army fiercely loyal to him. While Roman senators debated and vied for power in the capital, Caesar was out expanding Rome's influence, securing immense wealth through conquest, and creating an unshakable bond with his legions. His unprecedented military successes, chronicled in his own commentaries, made him a beloved hero among the common people, who saw him as a champion, but also transformed him into a colossus whose shadow loomed ever larger over the Republic, setting the stage for an inevitable clash with the old guard. The triumph in Gaul fueled Caesar's political ambitions, but also intensified the Senate's fears. Roman law explicitly forbade a general from crossing the Rubicon River, the small, shallow boundary separating his province from Italy, with his army intact. To do so was an act of war against Rome itself. Yet, on January 10, 49 BCE, facing an ultimatum from the Senate to disband his legions, Caesar uttered the immortal words, "Alea e acta est," the die is cast. This wasn't merely a strategic decision, it was a profound psychological leap, a declaration that he would either achieve supreme power or perish in the attempt, forever altering the course of Roman history and igniting a brutal civil war. Caesar's audacity paid off. He swiftly defeated his rivals in the ensuing civil war, culminating in the decisive victory over Pompey the Great's forces. But his triumph came at a cost to the traditional Roman Republic. His declaration as dictator for life in 44 BCE was the ultimate provocation. Traditionally, a dictator was an emergency official appointed for a maximum of 6 months. Caesar's perpetual dictatorship was an unprecedented move, consolidating absolute power in his hands. He wore the purple toga, usually reserved for triumphant generals, minted coins with his own image, and even had a statue dedicated to him with the inscription "To the Unconquerable God." These actions were perceived by many senators, steeped in centuries of republican tradition, not as visionary leadership, but as a tyrannical assault on Rome's cherished liberty, confirming their deepest fears that Caesar sought to become king. Caesar's reforms were sweeping and transformative. He reorganized the Roman calendar, establishing the Julian calendar, which largely dictates our own system today. He launched ambitious public works, granted Roman citizenship to many in the provinces, and implemented land redistribution programs to benefit the urban poor and his veteran soldiers. For the common people, these were clear signs of a benevolent, efficient ruler. However, for the deeply entrenched aristocratic Senate, these acts, while often popular, represented a further erosion of their power and influence. They saw not a reformer, but a sovereign centralizing authority, bypassing their ancient institutions and making decisions independently, fueling resentment among those who valued tradition and the old ways of the Republic. The relentless accumulation of power and Caesar's perceived disregard for the Senate's authority culminated in an atmosphere of intense paranoia and conspiracy. Whispers spread throughout Rome that Caesar intended to move the capital to the east, declare himself king, and rule absolutely. Fearing for the very soul of the Republic, a secret cabal of senators began to form, driven by a complex mix of patriotism, envy, and personal grievances. Among them were Gaius Cassius Longinus, a staunch Republican, and Marcus Junius Brutus, a man torn between his personal loyalty to Caesar and his family's historical legacy of defending Roman liberty. These men, convinced that only Caesar's death could save the Republic, began to plot his downfall, seeing assassination as the ultimate, albeit desperate, act of civic duty. The date was the Ides of March, March 15th. 44 BCE. Despite numerous omens, including a dream by his wife Calpurnia and a soothsayer's warning, Caesar proceeded to the meeting of the Senate, held that day in the Curia of Pompey's theatre, not the traditional Senate house. There, a group of some 60 conspirators lay in wait. As Caesar took his seat, he was surrounded by men, many of whom he considered friends and allies. They feigned an appeal, then suddenly, Publius Servilius Casca struck first, a glancing blow to the neck. What followed was a frenzied assault, as 23 dagger thrusts pierced Caesar's body until he collapsed at the foot of a statue of his old rival, Pompey the Great. The assassination was a brutal, chaotic act that plunged Rome into profound shock and uncertainty, shattering the fragile peace he had established. Among the throng of assassins was Marcus Junius Brutus, a man Caesar had not only pardoned after the Civil War, but had also promoted and treated almost like a son. The dramatic moment, famously immortalized by Shakespeare as Caesar's dying words, "Et tu, Brutus, you too, Brutus," perfectly encapsulates the profound sense of personal betrayal that intensified the tragedy. While the exact phrase is likely literary embellishment, the historical accounts confirm Caesar's shock upon seeing Brutus among his attackers. Brutus's motivation was complex. He was a direct descendant of Lucius Junius Brutus, who had expelled Rome's last king, Tarquin the Proud, and founded the Republic. This lineage, coupled with a genuine, if perhaps misguided belief in republican ideals, led him to choose what he saw as duty over personal affection, making his involvement the most poignant aspect of Caesar's demise. The immediate aftermath of Caesar's assassination was not the liberation the conspirators had envisioned. Instead, it was confusion, panic, and a dangerous power vacuum. The conspirators, with bloodied daggers, marched to the capital, expecting public adulation for their heroic act of restoring the Republic. Instead, they were met with stunned silence and fear. The Roman populace, who had largely benefited from Caesar's rule and admired his achievements, didn't cheer for their liberators. The city plunged into a state of semi-anarchy as different factions grappled with the implications of Caesar's sudden removal. Rome, a city built on order and law, now faced the very real threat of descending into chaos, its future hanging precariously in the balance. As Rome reeled, the Senate convened in urgent, tense deliberations. The conspirators, initially believing they had saved the Republic, were quickly outmaneuvered by others with political savvy. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal second-in-command and co-consul, seized the initiative. While the Senate debated granting amnesty to the assassins in exchange for respecting Caesar's acts, Antony was already plotting his next moves. He understood the immense popularity Caesar still held among the plebeians and the legions. These desperate, heated discussions among the senators highlighted the deep divisions within Rome, those who upheld the aristocratic republic and those who saw a stronger, centralized authority as the path forward, a conflict that Caesar's death had only exacerbated. The public's reaction to Caesar's death was far from unified. While some senators and aristocrats may have quietly celebrated the demise of the man they considered a tyrant, the common citizens of Rome mourned their leader deeply. Caesar had provided them with stability, grain distributions, public games, and a strong hand in governance. His death was not a liberation in their eyes, but a tragedy, a violent disruption of their lives. This division in public sentiment set the stage for one of the most powerful and consequential moments in Roman history, Caesar's public funeral. Mark Antony, a master orator and shrewd politician, delivered the eulogy at Caesar's funeral in the Roman Forum. What began as a solemn address quickly transformed into a fiery indictment of the assassins. Antony dramatically displayed Caesar's blood-stained toga and paraded a wax effigy showing his 23 wounds. He also revealed Caesar's will, which bequeathed generous sums of money to every Roman citizen and left his vast private gardens to the public. This masterful performance galvanized public grief into uncontrollable fury. The citizens, now enraged, turned into a mob, burning homes, hunting down the conspirators, and demonstrating that Caesar, even in death, wielded immense power over the hearts of Rome's populace, effectively sealing the assassins' fate. Caesar's will held another bombshell, one that would irrevocably alter the course of Roman history. It not only bestowed wealth upon the Roman people, but also formally adopted his 18-year-old grandnephew Gaius Octavius as his son and principal heir. Octavian, as he became known, was a young, seemingly inexperienced man, then studying in Apollonia. Many, including Antony, underestimated him. Yet this adoption immediately catapulted Octavian into the heart of Roman politics, giving him the immense prestige of Caesar's name, his vast fortune, and crucially, the loyalty of Caesar's veteran legions. It was an unforeseen twist that would profoundly shape the new political era emerging from the ashes of the assassinated dictator. Octavian, now formally Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus, proved to be far more astute and ruthless than anyone had anticipated. He swiftly returned to Rome, boldly claimed his inheritance, and began to consolidate power. Through a series of cunning political maneuvers, pragmatic alliances, and military victories, he systematically eliminated his rivals. He famously formed the Second Triumvirate with Mark Antony and Marcus Lepidus, a pact that initiated a brutal campaign of proscriptions, executing thousands of political opponents, including the renowned orator Cicero, who had spoken out against Antony. This ruthless efficiency, combined with his adoption of Caesar's potent legacy, allowed Octavian to rise as Rome's next formidable leader, eventually eclipsing Antony and laying the indispensable groundwork for the imperial age as Emperor Augustus. The assassination of Julius Caesar, intended to restore the Roman Republic, instead ignited a series of bloody civil wars that ultimately shattered its dream forever. The Republic, already weakened by decades of internal strife, could not withstand the power struggles that followed Caesar's death. Factions led by Antony, Octavian, and the conspirators like Brutus and Cassius clashed across the Mediterranean. These conflicts culminated in the decisive Battle of Philippi, where Brutus and Cassius were defeated, and later the Battle of Actium, where Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra. This final victory brought an end to over a century of civil war, but at the cost of the Republic, leading directly to the establishment of the Roman Empire under Octavian, now known as Augustus, forever reshaping Roman governance and the Western world. In death, Julius Caesar's legacy transcended his remarkable life. Immortalized in art, literature, and political thought, he became a figure of enduring fascination, often cast as both a visionary savior and a dangerous tyrant. His story inspired countless rulers, generals, and revolutionaries across centuries, from Napoleon to countless fictional portrayals. The very title Caesar became synonymous with emperor, giving rise to titles like Kaiser in Germany and Tsar in Russia. His life and assassination serve as a constant source of debate, a complex tapestry of ambition, betrayal, and the struggle between individual power and republican ideals, ensuring his place as one of history's most iconic and controversial figures. Julius Caesar's enduring influence is remarkable. Beyond his political reforms and the Julian calendar, his centralization of power provided a blueprint for the Roman Empire, which would dominate the Western world for centuries. His military innovations and strategic genius are still studied today. The concepts of Roman law, public administration, and even propaganda were all profoundly shaped by his actions and policies. His dramatic story continues to resonate through Western philosophy, inspiring discussions on governance, individual liberty, and the nature of leadership. From the construction of grand monuments to the very foundations of modern legal systems, Caesar's impact echoes down to our contemporary world, proving that some figures truly transcend their era. The Ides of March remains a timeless and potent symbol, offering profound lessons on unchecked ambition, the fragility of political institutions, and the unforeseen consequences of even the most well-intentioned actions. The conspirators believed they were saving the Republic by eliminating its greatest threat, yet their act merely hastened its demise and paved the way for an even more absolute form of rule under the very imperial system they abhorred. Caesar's dramatic life and violent end remind us that even the mightiest leaders are vulnerable to dissent and betrayal, and that the path to power is often fraught with moral ambiguities. His story ultimately serves as a powerful cautionary tale about the delicate balance between order and liberty, a balance that societies continue to grapple with to this very day.